Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Rachel, and today we're diving into the hidden worlds of video games. There are some things we take for granted when we play a game. You press start and the game world appears. From the get-go, there's rules, boundaries. Usually your goal's pretty clear from the beginning, unless you're playing an ultra convoluted JRPG. But every now and then, something big happens, and the world before you has completely changed. Light, dark, the apocalypse, timeline skips, mirror dimensions. It's no surprise that when you come across one of these moments in gaming, they stick with you for years. I still remember the wonder I felt when I realized, after playing a game for hours, that there was an entirely new world with an entirely new objective. I didn't even know this world existed. So let's take a look at some truly epic reveals that have cemented these moments as some of the most iconic in video game history. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past was originally released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1991. When you start the game, Link wakes up after hearing some telepathic messages from Zelda. "Link, save me! I'm imprisoned in the castle! Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi! You're my only hope!" And who can resist a telepathic message from a princess? After your rescue goes successfully, you bring Princess Zelda to the sanctuary, where you meet a priest. And the priest gives you a very clear goal. Collect 3 pendants, get the Master Sword, defeat the evil wizard, and save Hyrule. Now at the time, this was more than an adequate story setup. Especially after leaving the sanctuary, you traverse the entire overworld and it's huge. Forest, desert, river, lakes, a village, castle, a mountain. You got all your standard video game environments right there. And because you're given access to this huge world from the get-go in the same fashion as the original Legend of Zelda, there's no reason to doubt that this is the entire game. If you go through the manuals that were released with the game, the entire manual has no explicit mention of the Dark World. There is one tiny picture that is of the Dark World map. I didn't realize ahead of time, and I read that manual over and over again. On top of that, you're given a map, which, if you played the first Legend of Zelda, having an overworld map is really handy. These were the days before the internet. There was no game facts. There was Nintendo Power, but I was not that lucky. I literally got tips from my friend at recess. Anyway, the map is only a map of the overworld, including the 3 dungeons where you go to get the 3 pendants. So from the obvious materials, there's no mention of the Dark World. Now, there was also included with the game a top secret book. And if you open the sticker and look at the secret book, you do see mention of the Dark World and the subsequent dungeons. I really did not use this secret book. And also, the secret information is given in such a way that you really don't understand what the tips are for unless you are actually in that situation and stuck. Anyway, it was not immediately obvious to my childhood brain that there was another world in this game. And also, I have to confess that I played this game kind of uniquely. I played this game with my sister, and we played it for months. We explored every nook and cranny. We solved tons of puzzles. I mean, it took up a lot of my life. So the day that we finally got the Master Sword, I think we were actually screaming. We were so excited because we were finally going to beat the game. So we went to Hyrule Castle, and when we get there, Ganon sends Zelda into the Dark World, and then after you fight him with his dying breath, he decides to send you into the Dark World as well. Now at this point, my sister and I were legit freaking out. Like, seriously, what just happened? And when you enter the Dark World, you're immediately shown a completely different landscape. The sky is a dark red color. The music is really ominous. I mean, some of the best music in the Zelda series, let's be real. And when you start exploring the Dark World, you realize very soon that even though it's similar to the Light World, some of the paths are cut off. There's different secrets. The enemies are way harder. Now, there's 7 dungeons, plus the final dungeon of Ganon's Tower. More than half the game was hidden behind this twist. I'm not going to say for sure that this was the first instance of using a hidden world in gaming, but it was the first hidden world I experienced. And honestly, it's one of the most memorable moments out of all the games I've ever played, and probably why Link to the Past is my favorite game of all time. I love you. Here we have another Super Nintendo example. Final Fantasy VI was originally released in 1994. It was released in the United States as Final Fantasy III. Final Fantasy VI is one of the most expansive 2D RPGs ever made. And if I go into all the plot details and complexities here, this video would be over an hour long. So I'm going to try to simplify it as best I can. So in the case of Final Fantasy VI, you actually play through most of the game before encountering a huge hidden world. From the beginning of the game, your main antagonist is the Empire. Now there are various characters within the Empire, most notably Kefka. After meeting up with tons of characters, exploring tons of environments, getting an airship, singing in an opera, you finally go to face off against Kefka. But as you're doing that, Kefka kills the Emperor, and you ultimately fail. The airship blows up, everyone is scattered, the world has basically ended at this point. Because of the epicness of Final Fantasy VI's story, this moment has a particularly serious feel to it. Not only did you fail at defeating your enemy, but you've also set off a chain of events that basically causes the apocalypse, and the world of balance has now become the world of ruin. So 1 year later, Celis awakens after being in a coma. The continents have been completely altered by earthquakes, and it's become almost impossible to travel anywhere by foot. All of the old towns are still accessible, but the shape, color palette, and look and feel of the towns has completely changed. The characters in it are gloomy and depressed. At this point, you're given an optional task. Travel throughout the entire world and try to regroup with all of your friends. Now in FF6 there's a lot of characters, so this can take quite some time. And as you collect your characters, you're forced to come to grips with the fact that you really screwed things up here. Your choices have consequences. And speaking of consequences, there are actually items that you can miss because of this cataclysmic change. You no longer have the option to go back to the way things were before. Even if it's not as surprising as it was to me when I entered the Dark World in Link to the Past, this moment stuck with me because of its intensity. This was change on an epic scale. And when the game ends, you just have to rebuild and move forward. This narrative is really meaningful. There's no extra lives. Moving forward through gaming history, Castlevania Symphony of the Night was released in 1997 originally for the PlayStation. In the prologue, you start the game as Richter Belmont and face off against Dracula in one of the most memorable exchanges of dialogue. What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. Most of the game you play as Alucard, and once again, your goal is pretty clear from the beginning. You are tasked with exploring Dracula's castle and preventing Dracula from resurrecting. The game is full of exploration, finding items, getting power-ups, hidden rooms, secrets, and some good old-fashioned skeleton slaying goodness. Dracula's castle is expansive in its own right. There's over a dozen environments, each with their own music, and as you go through the map and discover rooms, you get a handy percentage counter that tells you how much of the map you've completed. You work towards 100%, and by the time you get almost to 100%, you feel like you're pretty much at the end of the game. Uniquely in this example, you can actually beat the game without ever coming across the hidden world. Right before the boss fight with Richter, you'll meet with Maria. She tells you that something must be controlling Richter, and she gives you the holy glasses that help you see through magical illusions. So she gives you a pro tip right here that you might need to equip the holy glasses when you face off against Richter. Now, if you do equip the holy glasses, you'll see this floating green orb flying by Richter's head as he attacks you. And the objective here is to attack the orb. If you defeat the orb, Shaft reveals himself and says he's been controlling Richter the whole time, but not to fear, he still will find a way to revive Dracula. After this, the inverted castle comes down, appearing from the sky, and as you enter, you realize that you are in an exact mirror copy of Dracula's castle. Everything is upside down. There's an entirely new castle to explore. You can actually 200% this game. And uniquely in this game, this castle is entirely missable. If you don't equip the holy glasses, you will never see the orb, and you kill Richter and get a different ending. When I realized that I was in a literal mirror inversion of Dracula's castle, I was so excited. I was having a blast playing Symphony of the Night, and I was worried that my time with the game was nearing its end. I could keep playing for almost as much time as I had been playing already. As you start to explore the inverted castle, you'll find some truly epic equipment, some really tough enemies, and some of the areas are actually different, not simply upside down versions. Some people critique this moment as artificially inflating the game because it basically swaps the entire first dungeon, but I was so excited about getting able to play more Symphony of the Night. I mean, why would you complain about that? It felt like I had unlocked a secret dimension that not everybody could access. And our last game is a return to the Zelda franchise. The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time was released in 1998 for the Nintendo 64. When Ocarina of Time came out, I was so pumped. I'm a huge Zelda fan. It's literally tattooed on my body. So from the beginning, this game also gives you a clear goal. After meeting Princess Zelda, you're tasked with obtaining 3 spiritual stones so that you can enter the Sacred Realm and claim the Triforce before Ganondorf does. The setup is similar to A Link to the Past. You have 3 dungeons throughout a vast overworld, and this time the game is in 3D, so it feels expansive in a whole new way. Another major change with this Zelda is there was an inclusion of more dialogue. As we've moved along, games have gotten increasingly more story-driven and more cinematic. Because there were only 3 dungeons revealed, I had a sense that there was a big reveal coming. But how could Nintendo possibly top A Link to the Past? Were they just going to do another Dark World? I mean, I secretly hoped for that because I thought the Dark World in A Link to the Past was awesome. But it seemed too obvious. After obtaining the 3rd spiritual stone, shit starts to go down. Zelda gives you the Ocarina of Time, and you use that and the 3 spiritual stones to enter the Sacred Realm. You open the door to the Sacred Realm and find the Master Sword. Unfortunately, Ganondorf appears. Thank you for opening the door for me. This was all part of my evil plan. You wake up in the Sacred Realm where the light sage Rauru tells you that you've now become sexy Link. I mean, adult Link. 7 years have passed, and Ganondorf unfortunately claimed the Triforce, but now you are old enough to be the hero of time and save Hyrule. And surprise, in the 7 years that you've been asleep in a coma in another dimension, things have really gotten screwed up. As an adult, you have all new items and 5 full new dungeons to explore. So once again, more than half the game is hidden behind this timeline skip. A unique aspect of Ocarina of Time, like A Link to the Past, you can travel between the 2 dimensions. So here you can travel between your adult time period and your child time period. Some of the events that you do in your childhood will affect what happens in the future. There was a bit of this in A Link to the Past where something you did in one dimension would affect the other. By using time as the dividing line here instead of an alternate dimension, you set up the relationship of causation. And now all of a sudden there are different ways that events can transpire. And by creating a game that spans almost a decade, here you're really brought on Link's journey. I was really excited that they decided to continue this element of having a separate world behind a life-changing event. I found it really awesome in A Link to the Past, and it was equally as meaningful in Ocarina of Time. And honestly, one of the things I love most is that after it's all over, after you've beat Ganon, saved Princess Zelda, and the world is righted again, you return to Link's childhood, and he gets the promise and the potential to live his life all over again, as if this horrible thing has never happened. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna cry here just thinking about it. Nintendo somehow found a way to make this hidden world strike an emotional chord in a way that is pretty unique. Of these 4 examples, Ocarina of Time, Symphony of the Night, Final Fantasy VI, and A Link to the Past. These events usually happen after the player fights a boss, and in many cases you lose to the boss. So often the change is a direct consequence of your actions as the player. It's pretty remarkable to me that games that are 15 or 20 years old were able to use these techniques to tell stories. And also, usually in the second world, the enemies are much harder, the puzzles are much more difficult, there's more secrets, but there's also a lot more rewards. In some cases, more than half the game is hidden behind these plot twists. Either way, I think it's hard to deny how powerful it is to hide part of your game from the player and reveal it to them later on. A recent trend in gaming is creating more open world style games where the world is huge, expansive, but I would argue that it's stronger to hide part of your game from the player. Let them discover it as the plot happens. Let there be a change that's a direct result of their actions. These are the moments that stick with us. What just happened? Guys, I think we're in the dark world. Well, I'm gonna try and figure out how to get back to our regular dimension. If you guys like this video, I'd love it so much if you gave me a thumbs up. Did I miss anything? Was there a game you wish I'd talked about today? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more content from me, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button. For now, I'm gonna try to find my way out of this world. See you guys next time. Bye!